Time now to investigate your individuality and to answer the question, what stops me? We'll begin this class sitting in Seja style, or Vajrasana. If it's available to you, sitting on your heels. If it doesn't quite work to sit on your heels, you can put some cushions between your feet. And if it's still a bit too much for your ankles and your knees, then just sit cross-legged. Take a moment to become still. Snuggle, get nicely grounded. But sitting up nice and tall as well, letting the heart open. Relaxing the face, softening the eyes. Find a still place where you can simply notice your breath rising and falling. As you breathe in, simply notice breathing in. As you breathe out, note to yourself breathing out. Or even more simply, with each breath, simply saying in, out. When you wander away mentally, just come back to this breath. Breathing in, breathing out. Noticing the calmness, the stillness within you. Feeling centered and grounded. And to this attention, add an intention for your practice today. From the sitting position, we'll add the 3-part Taoist breath. You may choose to keep your eyes closed. Bring the hands beside you to the floor, exhaling here. Then ride the next inhale, bring the arms out and up, filling the lungs, reaching up. Then as you exhale, bring the hands behind the head and like you're pushing the walls apart, a very stiff, jerky, muscular movement. As you inhale, draw the fingertips to the shoulders, lifting the elbows, lift the heart. And now as you exhale, push the palms away, rounding the back, drop the chin to the chest. Exhale completely. The palms turn up. Inhale, reach up, arch back, you can look up. Exhale, take it to child's pose. Allow your forehead to touch the earth, hands behind you. Then we'll flow again. Inhale, rising, reaching, stretching up, filling the lungs. Exhale out into the side, sighing it out. As you inhale, draw the fingertips in, lift the heart. Exhale, push forward as you round back. Palms turning up. Inhale, reach up. Surrendering to the earth as you exhale. 2 more cycles. Inhale. Just a moving, breathing meditation. Exhale. Feel what it's like to push the walls apart, sighing out the breath. With awareness, draw the fingertips in. Fill the heart. Exhale. Push forward as you round back. The palms reach up. Inhaling. Exhale to the earth. Last cycle, the most mindful. Inhale, rising. Exhale out into the side. Fingers draw in. Inhale. Push forward, round back. Palms reaching up. Inhale. Take it to child's pose and remain there. Remember, no 2 children are alike. So if you need a bit of support, you can rest your chest onto a block or a bolster. If you need to rest your head in your hands, that's okay too. For some people in child's pose, they may need the knees a little bit wider apart, so the top of the pelvis can fit easily in between the thighs. Some people prefer the hands backwards, so the shoulders can relax. Stay here, noticing the sensations. Now in child's pose, we're mainly targeting along the spine. But the knees are deeply flexed and the feet are plantar flexed, so you may feel sensation in these areas as well. But whether you feel those sensations there or not really depends on your uniqueness. As a famous doctor once said, there is no one alive more youer than you. I think his name was Dr. Seuss. But it speaks to the range of human variability. Nobody else has your biography, your life history. Nobody else has your biology, the exact shape of your bones, the strength of your muscles, the length of your tendons. You are totally unique. And there is nobody who's average in this world. Your biography and your biology will dictate what you can do in a yoga practice and how you're going to experience that practice. And that's something that we'll investigate today in this journey. And to help with that investigation, I invite you to pay attention to where the sensations are and what's causing the sensation. Our intention physically in a yoga practice is to stress tissues. All tissues need stress to be healthy. And they need rest to be healthy as well. But the stress that we apply in our yoga practice is usually one of 2 types. It can be the stress of tension or the stress of compression. Tension is generally the stress felt when tissues are trying to elongate. We apply a tension to the tissues, and to varying degrees they may stretch, they may not. But right now you might be feeling that tension all along the back side of the body, or the upper back, the middle, the lower back. Tension is generally felt in the direction away from the movement. We're folding forward, we feel it in the back side of the body. Compression is qualitatively quite different. Compression is when the body hits the body. Right now in child's pose, you may feel compression as your upper body hits your lower body. You cannot go any further when you've reached compression because the body's hitting the body. Compression is felt in the direction of the movement. We're folding forward, we feel the compression in the front of the body. The location of sensation gives you a clue as to whether you've reached tension or compression. Because of the uniqueness of the shape of your body, the bones, the tissues within you, your sensations will be quite different than somebody else's. Although you may look exactly like every other child in this pose, your experience may be very unique. Once you've reached compression, you can't go any further, therefore you can't stretch out any remaining tension, any remaining stiffness in the backside of the body. So for the last 3 breaths here, notice if you're feeling only tension or if you're feeling both compression and tension. If it's only tension, then in time you might stretch those tissues out and you can go further. But if you reach compression, you've reached the limit of how far you can go. Now, staying in child's pose, just come onto your elbows. Propping yourself up in your elbows, start to separate your knees wider apart. They don't have to be really wide apart, but just apart. And then sit back on the heels. This is the beginning of the frog. This little frog is called the tadpole. The intention here is to feel a nice stress through the inner groins, the adductor muscles. We're trying to get a tension through here. If you're not feeling it, you might try the technique of using one hand to push that knee apart, the opposite hand pushes the other knee apart, and then you lie down through the center. Now, if lying down through the center is just way too much, some options, you can have a bolster underneath your chest. Support yourself this way. Or maybe the knees are just too wide apart. You don't have to be at the ultimate depth in a pose in Yin. Just get to a place where you can hang out for a while, where you can relax. In time, you might find you can separate the knees wider, or you can come right to the floor. Some people prefer the frog with the hands between the legs. But for many people, that puts too much pressure into the neck, into the head, so they can keep the arms out in front. We want to ask this question today, what stops me? Again, the answer is going to be one of 2 types. Either you're stopped due to tension or you're stopped due to compression. Tension in this tadpole will be felt through the inner legs. Maybe you feel a little bit of pulling in the upper and the back as well, but we're predominantly focusing on the hips and the thighs today. Eventually you can work through tension. It may take months, it may take years, but you can stretch out those tissues. The muscles can elongate. The brain's connection to the muscles may start to soften the muscle tone to allow them to elongate. You may start to stretch out the fascial bags. All that can stress over time to become a little bit longer. But at some point, you might start to feel something in the back of the hips. And this is where the thigh bone, the femur, starts to impinge on the pelvis. Once you've reached that point in the back of the hips here, you feel this small area of compression, you've reached the limit of how far you can go. You're not going to change the shape of your bones in a yoga practice. Sometimes we can go around that point of compression as we flex the hips, coming forward. It changes the orientation of the pelvis to the femur, and maybe we can get a little bit more. But eventually, if you're feeling this in the back of your pelvis, near the butt, you've reached the limit of how far your frog will go. For some people, though, they don't feel it here yet, and they're not feeling it in the inner groins yet, so you can graduate from the tadpole to the more adult frog. Again, come onto your elbows. Lift your hips a little bit forward until the hips are above the line of the knees. And now you have the weight of your body pushing the knees wider apart. You can stay there or walk the hands forward. Or again, you can rest your chest onto a bolster. The intention of the prop is not to reduce the stress, but rather to make it tolerable enough that you can stay here for a while. So you still want to feel something. Now again, some people in this position, they start to feel it in the back of the hip here. So again, the femur is hitting the pelvis. And they can't get that nice tension in here anymore because they're stopped through compression. But if they move the hips a little bit more forward, they can start to separate the knees. Or if they move the hips a little bit backward. Again, by just changing the orientation of the femur in the pelvis, you might be able to go around that point of compression, get a little bit more stretch, a little bit more tension, until eventually you reach the new point of compression. For the very flexible students who have their pubic bone on the floor, they can separate their feet apart. I don't have the bones to bring my pubic bone to the floor, So I'm not going to keep my feet apart. I'm just going to hang out here. And the nice thing is, I'm doing this pose with you, so you know we're not going to be here very long. If this was regular class, I'd keep you here for about 8 minutes. But since I can't do it for 8 minutes, you won't either. So let's just stay here for about another 3 or 4 breaths. If that's appropriate. Remember, you never need permission to come out of the pose. Nobody's watching you. If this is too intense, then back off. And one last breath. Now we have been asking quite a bit of the tissues here, so we want to come out of this fairly easily. First stage, prop yourself back on your elbows. And then perhaps with a bit of a groan or a grunt, draw one knee in and the other knee. And eventually sit back in child's pose and just say thank you. Om. Remember, Om is the middle syllable of mommy. I want my mommy. So just pause here. Notice even here, are you feeling compression or tension? Tension you can work through over time. Compression, you've reached the limit. No point in trying to go further. You can just stay where you are. One more breath here. And let's slowly roll up to sitting. Kind of like a baby fern unfurling towards the sun. That's very poetic. I stole that from Shiva Ray. You sit up tall, just pause there for a moment. And then relax, shake the legs out a bit. So as I promised, we're going to work in this class mostly on the hips and through the legs. This is a great way to work on the concepts of tension and compression. We're going to start with the shoelace. So shoelace, bring the right foot underneath you. The left foot goes over top towards the opposite hip. You can lift your hips up, do the little wiggle, try to snuggle the knees on top of each other. Track 1 students, again, you may want to sit on a cushion, just rotate it 45 degrees. Again, the target area here are the hips, not the knees. So if you're feeling this in the bottom knee, straighten the bottom leg. Half shoelace, a lovely hamstring stretch. And we will do this later on. So we'll do half the full shoelace and half shoelace. So if you want, you can just start in that position. If the top knee doesn't like it, you can move the foot a bit more forward. That's going to lift this knee up, flex a bit more in the hip, which gives a little bit more room for external rotation, takes a bit of the stress out of the knee. Or put a block or some support between the two knees. Again, it will keep the knee elevated a bit. So we're targeting the hips here. But as we fold forward to a degree, as we flex deeper, it allows a little bit more external rotation. And you also get a bit more tension through the back of the buttocks. So if it's available, you can walk the hands forward. You can rest your head into your hands if you like. You can rest your elbow onto a block. Some people like to rest their chest onto a bolster. As always, when the bones feel support, the muscles can relax here. Track 2 and 3 students may actually bring the elbows to a bolster or the elbows right to the floor. Let's hang out here for about a minute. But as you hang out here again, notice the sensations within. And again, we're trying to categorize them into 2 broad classifications, tension or compression. So again, tension is the resistance of tissues to being elongated. Some tissues are very elastic, like the muscles. The muscles do lengthen when we apply a stress to them. When we release the stress, they go back. Other tissues, like the ligaments and the tendons, they don't stretch very much. Some only stretch maybe 4%. Some stretch quite a bit. The neutral ligament in the neck, It's quite elastic. And it's that elasticity that helps to lift the neck back up again, lift the head back up. All along the spine, we have a very elastic ligament called the ligamentum flavum, which means the yellow ligament. And it's one of our anti-gravity ligaments. As we've done a forward fold, it's the elasticity of that ligament that helps to draw us back up, so it's not all muscular effort. The tendon in the Achilles, it's very elastic, so when we run and we flex the foot, we're using that stored energy to help propel us. Even the IT band has a little bit of elasticity to it. So when we walk or we run, it stretches and then releases that energy back again. Now let's come into the half shoelace, so you can come on back up. Kind of keeping that top leg where it is, just straighten the bottom leg out. You want to straighten out your cushion now. And this can get quite juicy for the hamstrings, start to fold forward again. Again, just until you stop. And again, if it's too intense, use some support. The hamstrings are a great example of tension. Most people are quite tight in the hamstrings. We know it's tension because it's in the opposite direction of the movement. So moving forward, we feel this along the back of the leg, maybe a little bit about the back of the spine. But those are the qualities of tension. We just let that soak in. Now in time, these tissues will remodel. You can work through tension. It may take months, it may take years, but our active Yang practice is very much designed to work through tensile resistance of the muscles. Our Yin practice is designed to work through the tensile resistance of the connective tissues, the ligaments, the joint capsules, the tendons. And again, all these tissues need stress to be healthy. But once you reach the point where your chest is on your thigh, you reach that point of compression, that's it. You're not going to go any further. So in each of these two groups of tension and compression, there's kind of a spectrum. Tension can appear in the fascia, it can appear in the muscles, it can appear in the ligaments and the joint capsules. Compression can occur through just soft tissues hitting each other, like your chest to your thigh. Or it can be a bone hitting soft tissues. Some people, when they fold forward, they feel a pinching at the front of their hip onto their thigh. That's kind of a medium form of compression. And some people feel a very hard compression, like when you extend your elbow and the bones hit the bones. So you have these three qualities of compressions, and you have about 4 different qualities of tension. It takes a bit of paying attention to notice these. Let's slowly start to come up. Lean back to release the top leg. Again, maybe there's a bit of a groan. You can just pause here. Or if you want, you can shake the legs a little bit. That was an external rotation of the hips, so a nice counter movement is to internally rotate that leg. Just kind of drop the knee into the side. Or you can go back and forth and windshield wiper. Of course, we were also flexing the spine there, so if you want, you can move the spine in the opposite direction with tabletop or slide pose. And of course, one appropriate reaction to any yin pose is just to be still for a moment. When you feel ready to do the other side, we're going to start by bringing the left leg underneath us, and then the right leg comes over top. Make sure you are doing the other side. Don't do the same side twice. We're not symmetric, so maybe this is your funky knee, so if the bottom knee doesn't like it, straighten the bottom leg. If the top knee doesn't quite like it, again, either put some support between the legs or bring that foot a bit more forward. Take a moment to snuggle. So again, in this first half, we're really targeting the hips, but we can take pressure out of the knee if we flex the hip as well. That's going to allow a bit more external rotation here. Again, lots of options. You can rest your chest onto a bolster, you can rest your elbows onto a block, head in your hands, and eventually you change the height setting of the block, and maybe eventually you're all the way down. Again, the more you fold forward, the more tension you may feel in the back of the hips as these tissues start to stretch out. So this little koan of what stops me, it can flow through a spectrum of tensile resistance on one side all the way to final bone-on-bone compression. The tensile resistance can be in the fascia, it can be in the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, the joint capsule. And once you work through all that tension, then you get to the point where the body's hitting the body. And you might get soft compression, flesh hitting flesh, medium compression, the bone pinching the flesh, or hard compression, bone on bone. And generally when you reach compression, that's it. That's as far as you're going to go for that pose in that direction. You may be able to modify the pose a bit to allow a bit more range of motion, but eventually we're almost always going to reach compression. There are a few rare exceptions, but what's going to stop you after years of yoga practice is going to be the body hitting the body. Until then, you work through the tension. Now that's kind of an idealized yoga path. There are some people that the first day they start their yoga practice, they're already in compression. Just the shape of their bones, the unique anatomical structures they have. They never had to work through any tensile resistance. They just can't get anywhere because the bones are already stuck. Some people never do lotus pose, Padmasana, because they can't externally rotate that hip. The femur just comes into contact with the pelvis, and no amount of yoga is going to change that. Some people have always been able to do lotus. Years before they ever came to a yoga studio, they just flopped their legs in the lotus and that was it. No problem. Slowly come on up. If you're forward, we're going to come into the half shoelace, stretching the bottom leg out. And if you're sitting on a cushion, you can straighten the cushion a bit. Folding forward. Now, if it's really hard to fold forward, as always, you can bend the knee. That's going to release the hamstring a bit, allow you to come forward until gravity starts to draw you down. But usually it doesn't take too much to feel something here in the hamstrings. Again, if you're feeling it in the bent knee, lift the knee up a bit. Put some support between the legs. We're targeting the tension along the back of the leg. Once you're there, just stay there, hang out. Whatever position allows you to marinate in the juice of that pose. You may notice how the body is accommodating this shape. Maybe for the last 3 breaths, you can go a little bit lower. Tissues creep. That's a technical term. It's not a personality disorder. But as we apply a stress and we leave it into the tissues, they start to remodel. They start to elongate. Like silly putty nailed to a wall, eventually it becomes longer and drops down. The same thing happens to our tissues. They lengthen, they let go, they creep through constant stress. So one more breath here. But now your hamstring's probably pretty cooked, so let's slowly come on up. You can enjoy coming out of the poses. Lean back, release the top leg. Pause here and appreciate your grandparents. And you can just be still, or if you're craving a bit of a back bend, you can puff the chest up, you can shake the legs. Maybe doing the windshield wipers. Or the tabletop. Or is always just being still. We're now going to visit the land of the dragons. Now these are meant to be friendly dragons. These are Eastern dragons, not like Western dragons, like the one St. George slayed. Come onto all fours. And this time you're going to get to decide which is your more open hip. If you know your right hip is more open, step the right foot forward. If it's your left foot, step the left foot forward. If you're not sure, it doesn't matter, just step a foot forward. I'm going to start with the baby dragon. The hands on either side of the front foot. Walk the front foot forward so the knee is approximately above the heel. A lot of beginners will have blocks underneath their hands, or if your arms are particularly short and you can't easily reach to the floor, it's okay to have blocks in your hands. But check how the back knee feels as well. If the back kneecap doesn't like this, take a cushion and place it underneath the shins so the knee's actually floating and there's no stress at all on that back kneecap. If you don't have a block, you can maybe just fold up a blanket, pad the knee there. Some people need to have that knee bent. It's a little bit awkward to keep the knee bent, so if you want, you can put a bolster or something to support the shin. With the knee bent, the kneecap slides deeper into the groove at the bottom of the femur, and it doesn't press so much on the floor. In this first baby dragon stage, we're leaning the chest against the thigh, and we're trying to push the hips forward. But for some people, when they do this, they experience that second form of compression. The top of the pelvis is hitting the top of the thigh. So you get bone squishing flesh here. That's very uncomfortable for them. So you can go around that by simply turning the foot outward, turn the knee outward. And you might find that allows the top of the femur now to come inside the thigh. So you don't have to stay here in pain. If this is more accessible, you can go here. The next option, especially for track 2 and 3, students who have more natural range of motion, is to come into the low-flying dragon, bring that outside hand inside the front foot, walk the foot about 6 inches to the edge of the mat, and now the knee is a little bit more out to the side, you can come a bit more forward. And this can be quite juicy, just stay here, enjoy your dragon, or maybe walk your hands forward, or come onto your elbows. Now this is getting juicier and juicier as we go down. Some people can't quite get their elbows to the floor, so you can use blocks here. We have a couple of targeted areas here. We have the hip and the top of the back thigh. You might feel some tension through the inner groins, and that's a bonus. But eventually, people are going to start to feel a compression through the outside of the hip here. The track 3 students eventually just come onto both elbows. I'm going to hang out here for a bit. Remembering these are meant to be happy dragons. It's like Pete's dragon, or Darcy, the Christmas dragon, or your parents may have told you about Puff, the magic dragon, that marijuana-smoking dragon from Honolulu. Sounds suspiciously like Hawaii. Anyway, make these friendly dragons, not vicious dragons, so you can stay here for a bit. In the next stage, we're going to visit something called the winged dragon. Walking your hands back up, this really gets into the hips. Keep your hand inside the foot, and so the foot doesn't slide inward and become pigeon pose. And then wing the knee out to the side, rolling onto the edge of the foot. Just let the knee come up and down a few times. And this little movement helps to lubricate the hip socket, prepares the hip for what's to come. And then when the knee's as low to the floor as it's going to go, just stay there. Or maybe come onto one elbow, or maybe onto both elbows. Again, if coming onto the elbows doesn't quite work, it's okay to use blocks. It's okay to come out of the pose earlier if you need to. Now there's a little caveat whenever we work deeply into the hips here. Yogis long ago discovered that our emotions are embodied. They use the term issues in our tissues. Our emotions are physically inside of us. I mean, where else would they be? They're not in some Amazon cloud server or Google or Facebook. They're in the body. And the yogis discovered that the emotion of anger is in the hips. Irritation, annoyance, frustration, all resides right in here. So don't be surprised as we hold this pose if you start to feel a bit mildly pissed off. He did frog, and then he did shoelace, now he's doing dragon, trying to kill my hips here. That's okay, just notice anger. My old friend, welcome back. I haven't seen you for at least a day. Just don't throw anything, just notice what's happening. The Taoists would attribute this to liver energy. The liver meridian runs through the inner groins, and its cousin, the gallbladder, through the outside of the hip. The liver is the home of the emotion of energy, anger, energy. But it's also the home of kindness. If you have a healthy liver, you'll be naturally kind. If you have a damaged liver, you'll probably have anger management issues. Now we're going to slowly come out. We do this slowly so we can savor it. Plant your front paws, tuck your back toes under. A wonderful counter pose for the dragon is called the dog. Step back to, oh my God, dog. Even if you hate down dog, you'll love it right now. You can take your dog for a little walk. If you don't love the dog, you can just come to child's pose. But linger as long as you like in the dog. And when you feel ready, just come to your knees, sit back in child's pose. As you come into child's pose, don't even think about the other side of the dragon. Just enjoy this. But again, notice if you're feeling that pinching at the top of the pelvis. If you got it in the lunge, chances are you feel it in child's pose as well. So just as we did in the lunge by turning the knees outward, you can go around that point of compression. Some people just have very pronounced pelvises, especially this front part. Technically it's called the ASIS. Anterior, which means front, superior, which means top, iliac spine. The top of your pelvis is the ilium. And for some people, every time they flex, it pinches the top of their thigh. You don't have to stay there and suffer in child's pose, or in lunges, or when you're on your back, hugging the knees into your chest. If you get that pinching there, simply go around it. Abduct the legs. Now the time has come to do the other side. So coming back to all fours, make sure you are doing the other side. So step the other foot forward. You might need to grunt to get it there. Go, get it up there. Again, walk the front foot forward, but try to have the knee just above the heel of the ankle. You can come onto your fingertips, knuckles, palms. Again, if you need to, you can have blocks under your hands. Slide the back knee away. Most people have too much pressure on that back kneecap because the knee is not far enough back. So the further back you can bring the knee, the less pressure will be on it. But remember, you have other options as well. Maybe you have the option of just putting the cushion underneath the shin. So the knee is not actually touching the floor at all. Or you can pad the knee or do the trick of bending the knee. Hands on either side of the front foot. Again, if you get the pinching on the top of the hip, just turn the foot and the knee outward. We get the sense in this first baby dragon stage that we're pushing the hips forward and down. So again, we can start to work the top of the back thigh, work a bit into the outside of the front hip. Some people prefer to call this the pedicure fixing pose. There is a temptation and urge to play with your toes here. And again, urges are okay, but this is the dragon. So just notice urge and let it go. I'm going to be a little bit quieter on this side. The first side I talked a lot, and that was just to distract you from the sensations. Now you're going to be on your own more. But notice what you're feeling. What's stopping you from going further? Tension or compression? If you feel you can go further, we're going to come into the low-flying dragon. Walk the foot about 6 inches to the other edge of the mat. Bring the hand inside the front foot. Again, you can just hang out here with the elbows locked, or walk the hands a bit forward. And we're just trying to get to an edge where you feel a challenge. It's not about getting to your elbows. That's simply a direction to go to. The track 2 students may want to bring the elbows onto blocks. And if that's juicy enough, just stay here. Track 3 students, maybe you have to bring your elbows to the floor. Notice what you're feeling, but not just physically. We also have emotional edges. So notice the emotions. And just as we don't want to tear the body open physically, we're not trying to tear the heart open either. We play the edges. Back off if you need to. Now we're going to come to the winged dragon, so walk your hands back up. And keep your hand inside the front foot so it doesn't slide inward and become pigeon or swan. And then allow the knee to go up and down a few times, just winging the knee, rolling onto the outer edge of the foot. A little bit of movement to lubricate the hip socket, and then when the knee is as low as it's going to go, just stay there. Or, if you can go lower, come onto one elbow, maybe onto both. But again, we're not trying to get to the floor, we're trying to get to sensation. So if getting to the floor is too sensational, back off a bit. Be where you can linger longer, rather than stay at the ultimate edge. Got about a minute here. This dragon pose is great preparation for the poses where you bring the foot behind your head. And while we don't do that pose in Yin Yoga, studies have shown that people who can bring a foot behind their head are always more successful when asking for a raise at work. Your boss will give you anything if you walk in there with one foot behind your head, just to get you out of the room, if nothing else. That was just to distract you for the last few seconds. Let's walk the hands back up. Something amazing is about to happen. Plant your front paws, tuck the back toes under. With a song in your heart and a smile on your lips, step back to the dog. Om Namah Shivaya, we say in yoga, which roughly translates as, thank you, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, Abraham, whoever your Ishta Devata is. Paul Grilly. Linger in your dog as long as you like, and when you feel you're ready, child's pose. Studies have also shown that people will believe anything you say, as long as you begin with studies have shown. Feel the echo of your dragons. And from child's pose, simply slide onto your stomach and roll onto your back. When you come onto your back, you can just pause here for a moment. Now, we've been doing a lot of external rotation through the hip. So we're going to do some internal rotation now to balance that. It's going to be a variation of half saddle, or another way of calling it is windshield wipers. Have your feet as wide as the mat, but have your heels close enough that you can touch your heels with your hands, and then just drop both knees from side to side a few times. And then keep both knees to one side. See if you can drop the knee going down the middle right to the floor. Reach down and grab that foot. If you're flexible enough, you can bring the foot right beside the hip. So now you're quite into the half saddle. But for most people, that knee is going to be up in the air. If you want, you can help to weight it down by bringing the opposite ankle on top of the knee. But if you feel any pain in the inner knee, put some support underneath the knee. Just to help take the stress out of there. You can still weight the leg down. But now we're internally rotating in that one hip. Again, if the knee is fine in your half saddle, you can just have the other leg fall out to the side. Or maybe you can clasp the elbows over your head, just to increase the sensation of stress all along the front side of the body. So we're internally rotating, but also a mild extension through the spine. I invite you to close your eyes. And again, notice the qualities of the experience. Tension or compression. Again, compression is an ultimate stopping point. Once you reach compression, you can't go any further in that direction. But sometimes you can go around that by modifying the pose slightly. If it's tension you're feeling, cool, just suffer. In time, you can work through that. The tissues can elongate, loosen up. We're just going to let this soak in. So see how much you can soften where you feel the tension. Remembering always that time is more important than intensity. But for the few people who are cursed by being flexible and you don't feel this, for the track 3 students, you can bring that other knee up and maybe clasp the knee. As you pull that knee in towards you, you're going to be changing the orientation of the pelvis. And that may add a little bit more juice to the top of the thigh. If that still doesn't give it to you, you can come into a half happy baby type position. The other students who are feeling something here, you can stay here, but we can also add kind of a banana in the saddle. So for instance, if your right knee is bent, move your upper body to the right. If your left knee is bent, move the upper body to the left. So you're still feeling that nice sensation on the top of the thigh, but now you're adding it through the left side of the body. We'll be here for about 2 more minutes. Remember your intention for the practice today. And use the power of that intention to help you pay attention. So keep returning to awareness of what's happening right now. About 3 more breaths. Now this has been fairly juicy, so let's come out very gently. If you're in the banana, just straighten your upper body again. The bent knee that's bent, roll away from it. So if the right knee is bent, roll to your left. And then straighten the leg. Roll onto your back. And just pause here for a moment with the leg straight. Feel the rebound of that pose. If you're craving a little bit more relief, again, you can do whatever feels organic. Hug the knees, circling the knees, or spinal lifts, happy baby. Circling the knees in both directions. And we're going to come back to the beginning of the windshield wiper pose, or the half saddle. Again, bend the knees, have the feet in close enough that you can touch your heels, but have your feet as wide as the mat. And this time drop both knees to the other side. You can just stay here in a windshield wiper position. For those that are more flexible, you can reach down, grab that foot, bring the heel towards the buttock, and see if you kind of scoot down the mat until the knee is closer to the floor. If that knee's floating again, you can rest your opposite leg on top of it. But again, if you get any pain in the inner knee here, support the knee. That support of the knee may take that edge out. Again, the targeted area here is the top of the thigh, and we're arching the back. So we're going to linger here for a bit, whatever variation works for you. And even if you're very flexible, just stay in this easier initial position before you come and grab the knee and do the deeper versions. Remember, another option is to clasp the elbow over your head, just to increase that nice tensile stress all along the fascial lines through the front of the body. But as always, if you get tingling in the fingers, don't be here. Once you've got that edge, commit to being still. The second principle of the practice. If the edge moves, it's okay to move to go find the next edge. Or if this becomes too intense, it's okay to back off a bit. Tension often feels spread out. Compression often feels in one small, stuck area. For most people in this pose, they're sensing tension, a long line of tension. If you're feeling a stuckness in the lower back, sometimes a subtle adjustment might help you to go around that point of compression. If it's tension, just enjoy it. It's not bad to be at compression. Compression is another form of stress. Our bones are really rejuvenated through compression stress. So it's okay to be at compression, as long as it's not painful. But painful anything, tension or compression, is not good. Now, if the tension is ebbing away and you're not really feeling it, the next option again is to perhaps bending the other knee, hug the knee into the chest. Again, for a lot of people, that makes it juicier. The very flexible students may have to come into a half happy baby version. Or if you stay in the initial position, you can add the side bend, the banana, on this side. So if the left knee is bent, move your upper body to the left. If the right knee is bent, move it to the right. So you add a nice side bend to the upper body. For about 2 more minutes, let this soak in. About 3 more breaths here. Again, this has been surprisingly juicy. It sneaks up on you. So slowly, with total awareness, enjoy coming out of this pose. Remember, that's why people keep coming back to Yin Yoga, because it feels so good to come out of the pose. Bring the upper body back to the center, then roll away from the bent knee. Slowly straightening one leg, and then the other. So come onto your back. Pause here for a few breaths. Notice what you're feeling now. If you're craving a bit of movement, again, move in whatever way feels organic. If you hug the knees, this time grab the back of the knees, just to put less stress on the knees, and then circle the hips. And then with the least amount of effort, prepare yourself for final Shavasana. The final relaxation. And if you feel you might get cold, put on some layers, put on socks, grab a blanket. Take off anything that's constricting. Take off your watches, you don't need to time this. Take off your glasses, you don't need to see where we're going. Let your hair down. If you have a bolster, place it on the back of your thighs so you can release the lower back. And then take a moment to become still again. Become aware of the earth beneath you. Feel yourself sinking into the earth. Your body releasing tension. Become aware of the sky above you. Allowing your breath to come and go without effort. Your arms and legs to the side. Become aware of the space all around you. The temperature of the air against your skin. The touch of your clothing. There's nothing to do now. Simply be in this state of total relaxation. Deepening stillness. The physical practice works its magic at a deep cellular level. But as important as the stress is this period of rest. It's this refractory period that allows the tissues that we just used to become more usable. And this healing, this wholeness, develops beneath conscious awareness. So while your body relaxes and releases completely, you are healing. You're becoming whole, healthier. And this healing will continue throughout the days to come, unconsciously. Consciously, what you'll remember is this stillness, this feeling of peace, of joy. Enjoy this moment. Enjoy being relaxed. And throughout the days to come, enjoy being. Now slowly allow your breath to lengthen. Enjoying your breath, bring some movement to your fingers and toes. You can gently roll your head from side to side, circling your wrists and ankles. To reawaken, we'll have a big stretch. Bring the arms over your head. Interlace the fingers, turn the palms away, take a deep inhale, and then stretch, get as long as you can. Push and pull and reach. And as you release, roll to your left side. Pause there for a moment. Bending your knees, using your bottom arm as a pillow. And rolling up to sitting. I hope you enjoyed these few insights into your own individuality.